Well, welcome back, everybody. Let's go ahead and close things out here. Finish talking about new religious movements. And the first of those that we'll talk about really isn't new at all. And it's today what's commonly called Wicca. It's also referred to within the studies of religion as neo pagan. And as far as its history goes, this is really a timeless or ageless type of religious practice. For example, before Islam, before Christianity, before Judaism, before Buddhism, before Hinduism, right? Before all of these different religions that we have studied and learned and talked about, people had some type of religious practice that involved nature and the different elements of the physical world and having an interaction with those different elements, such as fire or a volcano or lightning or wind, right? Or different crops and the crop cycles, right? So this idea of interacting and worshiping those different aspects of the physical world, that is the roots for Wicca. So to say that it's a new thing is false. So that's when you hear somebody say the word pagan, that's what it's referring to. It's winding the clock way back thousands and thousands and thousands of years back before all of those different religions that we've talked about and studied became organized. So that's what we talk the term pagan. So we just put neo in front of it because in the 1950s in England, it was rediscovered, if we could use that term. The two principal figures are Gerald Gardner and Margaret Murray, and they became interested in English folklore as well as the different indigenous religions that are part of not only England but Scotland and Wales, today what we call the United Kingdom. A perfect example of this would be the people that today we call the Druids, right? The Druids were an indigenous group there. They had their own religious practices. So what Gardner and Murray did is they rediscovered this and they started to become really, really interested in this. Now, there's a problem with this type of practice because, according to the laws of England at the time, this is witchcraft, right? So it was very much kind of an underground, very secretive movements that Gardner and Murray were establishing and attracting followers. And there was an old law, believe it or not, on the books in England at the time, which was the Witchcraft Act. And this law allowed, back in the day in the 16 and 1700s for witches to be burned. Yeah, you remember that from history class and all those stories. So that law had to be repealed in 1954. And then once that law was repealed, then all those people, were able to practice paganism, practice Wicca out in the open and attract followers without having to worry about being arrested or anything, any type of backlash from the community. And even in America, this was true as well. There was a court case, Roberts versus Ravenwood Church of Wicca, in 1982, that the U.S., the federal government, recognized Wicca as a religion and that the people who practiced Wicca could not be persecuted. So it's really interesting when people talk about Wicca as being something new. It's not new at all. It's been going on throughout human history. It's just been called different things. Now, when we talk about the teachings of Wicca, it is very, very diverse because it's not really an organized religion with the different ones that has, a leader, and there's a scripture, and there's rituals. There's so many different ways that Wicca is practiced. For example, some Wiccans believe that there's unknown forces, then that's called magic, that lie within us as well as in the physical world, right? And that the absolute dwells within nature. So then, what the participant tries to do, the participant tries to interact with these different elements, right, that might be in different parts of the physical world, and to draw those forces into him or herself. And these chiefly occur with elemental forces such as wind or fire or rushing water such as rain, right, or a moving river or a brook, as well as the change of the seasons that happens during the summer solstice or the winter solstice or spring, right, as well as the new and the full moon. Now, it's important to remember that existing religions, such, for example, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they all have festivals that are associated with these different seasons. The perfect example is the Christian festival holiday of Easter, which is marked as the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So Easter is associated with the equinox, right? That's when the earth tilts on its axis, right? That gives us the seasons. But Christians are not worshiping, right? They're not associating the absolute, the ultimate, the holy with the equinox, with the change of the seasons. That's just how that season is marked. That's just an example. But if you practice Wicca, then you do recognize that power is associated with that movement can be drawn into you, right? So that's a key difference there. Also, other Wiccans might worship ancient gods and or goddesses that are no longer being worshipped, such as different Norse and Norse mythology, like Woden, right, who's the king of the Norse gods, right? Or they might worship Babylonian gods. Even though Babylon has fallen and the culture of the Norsemen has fallen as well, they might rediscover those and then worship those gods and those goddesses. There's also the practice of witchcraft, which involves spells and magic. And you notice the alternate spelling there of magic. Sometimes see it spelled with the C, sometimes with the K. And if you're Wiccan, you can practice Wicca solitary all by yourself, or you can join into a coven, which would be a group of people to practice the different rites and rituals that are associated therein.